Hey, so we're super excited to be here. This is our last and final project for the residency here at 2050 Community at the Refuge with Daniel Kathalynas. So today we're going to actually just do a talk about what the project was, what he did, what he didn't do, the concepts behind it, and how it all worked out. 2050 Community, as a community, part of what we're looking at is the idea and the question about creative futures based on technology, the influence of technology on humanity, and just all the changes that are taking place right now globally for a lot of people. Major changes happening and lots of questions. And so we as a community are looking for artists that are interested in discussing those concepts and working on projects that deal with those concepts. And so that's what we did, our project here. We were looking at the ideas of humanity and technology and the relationship between those things. So we were looking at the relationship between those things, and our final project is amazing, super exciting. So we'll be inserting that into our talk as well as showing that across our platforms on YouTube, Instagram, and on our website. You can check it out and see the amazing work that he's done, which is really cool stuff. So talk to us a little bit about what you did, why you did it, and how it worked out for you.
Well, it was interesting. We had a conversation about the technology and humanism and what it means to really embrace both of them, and then also not embrace both of them.
Right.
And I was thinking to work a bit out of my comfort zone. Wanted to explore the stop motion. And
the stop motion is something you've done before.
Yes, I've done it before, limitedly. Not in any extreme way, but just some really short, tiny things that I experimented with. And I wanted to give this a go.
Yeah, so this is super ambitious, to say. Anybody that knows about stop motion knows that it's incredibly complicated and takes a great level of detail and patience and all that stuff. Yeah.
Back-breaking patience. Yeah. That's for sure.
So it's like it's ambitious, to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was fun because I got a chance to learn about Final Cut Pro, which I was not very familiar with.
Right.
It was a new program for me. And
just Final Cut Pro. Just start out with like the most complicated professional program. This guy. There's no starting small for you.
No, I like huge learning curves.
Yeah, and that's amazing. It's amazing.
And I really enjoyed it because I got a chance to work with a new tool.
Yeah.
And stop motion lends itself to me to have this very flickery retro tech aspect to it. There's an aesthetic there that you don't really get with video. And sometimes people even use video to make a stop motion film. They try to make it look stop motion because of the aesthetic.
Right.
And doing effects like that or seemingly effects like that is very interesting to me. I've always liked the early Ray Harryhausen
favorites,
Clash the Titans stuff and all that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
It's my favorite. Yeah.
And then I also like the new CGI things too. But that aesthetic was particularly what was inspiring me for a piece like this. So I get to take something, a concept that's very new and exciting, and it's really what's happening around the world today, evidently, to everyone, not just, even in grandmas that are sitting watching cable television or Netflix, you're getting some type of techno download, whether you think so or not, with ads and things like that.
That's so true.
Surfing the internet.
It's just permeating the culture in a way that people don't even recognize that it's happening. That's so
right.
Interesting.
You don't recognize that it's happening, that it's coming outside from you and going into you, and it could be very much in the brain, not just there, but in the consciousness of us.
Exactly.
So to explore the idea of flowering, I'm very into nature. I'm very into the cycles of nature. The seeding, the growing, the flowering, the pollinating, the dispersal, the withering, the coming again, the phoenix idea. I really enjoy the aspects of nature. So what is that in technology? And that's what I started to think about. Oh, wait a second. Okay. What is that in technology? It's part of our human nature. Okay. Everything here builds, eventually we build something, or it gets destroyed, or it grows again, or we move on and grow into some other aspect. So why should technology be any different? And thinking about those questions allows me to come up with, well, for me as an artist, I like to work organically. So it allows me to work organic.
What does that mean?
That means not to have a completely full picture of things.
Okay.
So in other words, I don't have to have the cue cards for every scene and understand what's going on all the way to the end. I like to work where I have a basic idea and then allow that to grow as I go.
Right, okay.
Very much in the process, very much in the movement, even in the physical movement. I'll start working on something like I was wrapping the baby with wires, right? Creating this wire baby, essentially. And as I'm wrapping, I'm getting new ideas. Oh, wait a second, this should be for the next thing. Or wait a second, I could add this here. Or so organically, that is a very interesting process when I'm talking about the concept of tech. What does that mean, right? Like how does tech grow organically? I don't know. It's a product or a byproduct of us.
Well, now that's the conversation now with like all the artificial intelligence, right? That's one of the concerns. One of the high points and one of the values, and then also one of the concerns is it growing organically? It's like self-learning, self-teaching, and like evolving in a way that the engineer at some point doesn't even know what it's doing, right? So it's super poignant that you chose that direction.
A technical flowering.
Yeah.
Right, that growth. And it is interesting because I believe our AI may be already computing itself.
Right. Yeah.
Because we put it there. I mean, not by accident.
No, it's definitely not an accident.
We did put algorithms into effect. What is an algorithm? Like, why would we even have that? So
right. That's why do we even have this? Because a couple of very powerful and smart and lucrative, financially wealthy people decided this is what they were going to do. And so now that's part of where the project we're looking at. Now we are just taking the impact of that. Do we have a choice? What choice is that? If we do have a choice, where can we make those choices to participate or not participate? Is it taking over? Are we comfortable with that? It's definitely not a very black and white thing, right? These are all the questions that we're kind of looking at to help people think these things through and make some decisions and decide if they're comfortable. So I think our project was really more of a dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Because we started out, like you said, it was very organic, like just the concept. And then, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the process that you went through? And so like we went to the botanical gardens and we did some shots here, and then, the baby, it kind of just evolved from a technical point of view with the programs and the stop motion. How did that work out for you?
Beautifully. I think that limitations also makes a whole new frontier for me. So in other words, when I have the palette open with a lot of colors and all my colors are out there, well, I like colors, so I'm going to use a lot of color. I use this color, that color. But then when I start to narrow down a limitation, then it forces me to grow in an aspect that I never thought I would. And this project really did that for me.
Nice.
And
I love that. I really love it. You have such a positive attitude towards limitations and challenges. It's great.
Limitations and challenges.
Yeah, we love that.
That's how I grow. I don't know about everybody in the world, but I know for me, if everything is really, really good and simple, I usually don't grow much. But if things come with me like a hurdle or a speed bump or something to move around or move over, then I get a chance to grow in a different direction. This project was really a process of that growth, and I'm thankful for it. And I like the actual process of the stop motion, which was fantastic. But there was also the process of I have to slow the hell down in my head, because if I'm doing, which this film has 1,850 still photographs.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That accumulate to almost 2.5 minutes. But they're all run at different times, so they're not exactly 30 frames per second. But it forced me to slow down and take it all into account and say, okay, what is my next move, and where is the light for this?
Yeah.
And the challenge, really, the challenge was beautiful because I got a chance to work in a changing environment, an environment outside of the Norfolk Botanical Garden, especially in the first scenes.
Which is challenging to shoot outside.
challenging the shoot outside. There's people walking around on a Sunday. They're walking their dogs, and they got to wait till they get out of the shot and then take the next picture, or do the paint on the face and then take the next picture.
And then there's the model.
And there's the model, and
laying in the ground in the cold for hours with wires in my mouth. Like, I did the best I could.
Then there's sun moving, the sun. Then there's breeze and blowing everything around. But that allowed me to be open to the experience.
And
just say, go with that. What could I be how could I be as an artist in the flow and be a filmmaker? Be a filmmaker in the flow. Not have, all these storyboards written out to have a story that could have completion. But just go with the flow and see what turns out. Something like Apocalypse Now. I mean, that movie was go with the flow. They were so angry at the director because
I did a thesis on that movie.
You did?
I did a master's thesis on that movie.
And what an amazing film came out of that.
Amazing.
Now I can see why they cut some of the stuff out.
Right. People almost didn't make it out alive from that movie. It was so experimental and organic.
Beautiful example of filmmaking in the moment. And I realized with that first scene when we were shooting that's what this is going to be. Filmmaking in the moment. And then I know that Stephanie, my model, had to go away and do some other things. And I was thinking, well, how do I resolve this? So I had to figure out an idea.
Advertising my failures.
It wasn't a failure, it was a hurdle, right?
Yes,
a hurdle.
Another challenge.
And that's where we came up with the idea of using the baby. At first I was thinking, well, let's use, we have somewhat of a mannequin here at the 2050 Community Love Refuge. And I thought maybe we use the mannequin. And then I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be a heck of a film shot. And what kind of green screen do I have to use to get back from that to shoot it? It posed a lot of problems in my head. So that's when we discussed, well, how about something smaller, like the baby?
Weird, crazy little baby.
Crazy little baby. Not necessarily, to me, not
which is
negative or positive.
For me, very perfect. So the final outcome that you put together really expresses perfectly my feelings at the moment about the fusion of technology and humanity and how that's working out. I do personally feel a little bit overwhelmed, and I do personally feel a little bit uncomfortable, and I do feel like it is nesting itself into my life in a way that I can't completely control, and that I am, there is this feeling of evolving into something that I'm not quite sure if I like it or I don't like it. So the baby really drives it home because I feel like it's awkward. I feel like it's awkward. And so I love the baby because I think the baby shows that awkwardness. It's like this, you're becoming empowered and you have all these new skills and all these new powers and things that you can do, but it's not really familiar and it's not entirely comfortable. And I don't know personally for me if I like it, and I don't know how much of it I'm going to keep. This is a conversation over time with the futures question, like, how much of this am I going to keep? That's a simple question for myself. So here, you can take a look at the video and you can see exactly what he did, and he'll talk us through what he chose to do and why. It's super interesting.
Enjoy. All right, this is flowering, and let's start her up. This is really the only part of video that's in it. Video framework. It's about a quarter of a second that I just looped. The rest is stop motion or still imagery. This was interesting. Norfolk Botanical Garden, working outside in the unstable elements for stop motion, working with an atmosphere that is constantly moving is very different in stop motion, because usually people that work in that field like to control their environment. Now this was obviously very uncontrollable, but loose enough to be organically grown and filmed. Magnolia. I love the symbolism of flowers, and especially flowers that are falling apart or coming apart at the end of their life cycle, proceeding to have another growth. This film is, for me, it's really showing
the introduction of technology into the system and allowing that to grow and create an outcome. So, bringing a model in to help with the arm modeling, I thought was a fascinating experience. The cables, like wires, like veins or arteries that are coming out to make something new, a new symbolic life form, or perhaps a shadow or mirror of our own. There's 1,850 approximate still shots here. It did take quite a while. And you can see the movement of this doll as I was touching it and gluing it. And it's one of the things that I liked about the 1930s King Kong as well, is you could actually see the fur moving on King Kong. And that's because the modeler was moving the Kong model. I really wanted to get that under the foot shot because there's something very interesting about stepping on something, and that happens to be a cable that has a heart on it. The new growing life. And this was an interesting, I had to cut out the eyes and the mouth and put them all in. And, just the fundamental essence of who are we, where are we going with tech, and do we lose our heart or not? And is it another representation of a flowering, of something reproducing itself? And that's the questions that I want to pose here. Not that it's good or bad, black or white, positive or negative, ineffective or effective, but the growing of, is it really an extension of ourself? And if so, why?
Hope that's super interesting stuff. Really great stuff, and I really love it because you really brought visually home the concepts and things that we were looking at together. Daniel and I, we used a book, which is something that was created anonymously by several authors that are members and also affiliated with the community, who are real people but just published anonymously due to some of the sensitivities and things in the book. It's called The Last Generation of Humans, and it's all about what is 2050 going to look like, and what are those different experiences going to be for people. People who are on the grid, people who are off the grid, right? It's going to be people who are super, super networked. Even we're seeing it now, right? Even in our communities, we're seeing it now. Like some of the people that we were looking at throughout the residency are like, not to call anyone out in a bad way, because never do that. But it's super interesting what guys like Virgil Abloh and Philippe Pantone and some of these guys are doing, which is so high tech and it's so conceptual and it's so tied into these guys have so much money backing them. They can basically do whatever they want. There's like almost no limits in terms of what they can design and what they can work with, the materials they can work with, the engineering they can work with. At some point, we're seeing like a breakaway effect where those guys the stuff they're doing is so high tech and so conceptual and so extreme that I think the public is not necessarily, it's not even accessible. Mm-hmm. So even to someone like me and some of our artists in the community that have been in the community for a long time, we get it, and I have a master's degree, a PhD, like I get this stuff. I don't always know what they're doing. Like I don't always understand what it means. I'm not understanding always what the point is. Right. Maybe I know what some of the technology is and how it works, but it's even starting to lose me to a degree. Super tied into technology and really have the funds and the education level and the conceptual background in order to entertain that stuff. And then there's kind of the rest of us. And so we're trying to keep up. And I think at some point we're saying, if we're having trouble keeping up, what about some of the people that this in the book discusses, people that are like really living, in impoverished communities, off the grid communities, people living in refugee camps. Like there's just human beings everywhere that even in our community, we have, artists who are doing amazing work, who live in refugee camps, and they will just never have access to this stuff, not even on an informational level. Their internet goes down, their power goes down, like they can't keep up. So what does that mean for them, right? So it looks like there's going to be these two populations of people, and what they're kind of asking for is like, hey, like, don't leave us behind here. Like, what does that look like for us or for them as artists when they can't keep up in the information and technology game? So I think these are some of the questions that we were looking at and some of the things we're looking at in the book. So you read the book, very dystopian, very depressing, some of the issues it raises, and then you worked on the project, and your experience with technology is funny because the question is, how is it influencing us? How do we feel about it? But then we chose on purpose a more technologically advanced process than you're used to, because you usually just paint.
Right.
Not say just, but you usually paint and you use a lot of available materials. This was, you had to learn, like, these were not available materials. Like, you had to really have the ability to sit and learn all this technical stuff, and it was a very technical project. So that in itself was really interesting as a decision that we made to see how you feel about it. So download for us, how did you feel about it? And what are your thoughts now? You had thoughts before you started, and then you read the book and you worked on this project. So what are you thinking about this stuff now?
Well, I think the book to me seemed, it almost was like a running monologue, which is a very interesting, different type of reading for me. And usually I don't read stuff like that. For many years, I've read only nonfiction. I think I read 30 years of nonfiction, and I just started to read fictional work recently, in the past year or so, 2 years almost. But reading that book, it got me thinking about, well, is it nonfiction? I mean, there were some things in there that seemed very real to me. Like, oh wow, this is going on, but this is from a perspective that might be different. So taking that into account, and thinking about the humanism in there, like the things like you were just saying about the refugees and the refugee camps and people in places like that, that brings me back to who we really are. And it doesn't matter about tech of what's going on, but what is our heart saying?
Yeah.
What are we saying about inside here?
Yeah. Right. That's the human experience.
And how do we cope and deal with each other?
Yeah.
And do we see each other as brothers, or do we see each other as that person's from another country? So, and that's where I was coming from, you know, in the aftermath of that book. And when I started the project, I knew I wanted to insert humanism. You know, that this is a flowering of us. We are doing this.
Right.
It's not that, you know, outside forces.
No one's making this happen.
No. If I keep spending money on Netflix is going to keep building, which is cool. That's fine. But if I keep spending money on video games, then they're going to keep building video games.
Precisely.
If I want more marketing, I'm going to spend money on more marketing, and therefore more algorithms are going to be developed. All those things are funneled by us.
Yeah.
They're inseminated by us. We seeded the ground for that, and we do as an individual. And don't get me wrong, we do things as a community, but as an individual, what am I looking at? What am I doing? How involved do I want to be? Do I want to spend my time on video games? Do I want to spend my time on playing D&D? Do I want to spend my time on making art?
Yeah.
That humanism aspect is the seed to everything that goes on in the real market, I believe.
Absolutely.
And
100%
this to me is what I was thinking of when doing the project. So that humanism, that we are the seeds, that is the question that I want to bring up is, well, what are you doing with what are you seeding today?
Right. Good question. Good.
What are you willing to seed?
Yeah. And is it going to be just perpetuating this technology, or are we perpetuating some sort of positive human experience? Which is it?
Or how about using the technology for the benefit of others?
Benefit of humanity. There's a huge community of people that really into that, you know, looking at how technology can benefit humanity and not just be like a runaway capability that's sort of self-licking itself, you know, self-licking ice cream cone, like it's just...
The runaway capitalism train, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right.
Nothing wrong with capitalism, but I think that I have a choice to pay attention to these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And once I'm awakened to them, I can't become unawakened.
Right.
It's impossible. It's impossible for me to go back to what I was. You know, I can't. Once I'm a pickle, I can't go back to a cucumber. You know, and there's that whole process that I've learned something and what I'm going to do with it. And you know, I think that, you know, spend a mass amount of dollars on technology is not neither good nor bad. But what is the intention? That to me is where we get to make our decision.
Right. Yeah.
I think
so maybe you're thinking about it a little bit differently now, or more in depth than you were prior to.
More in depth, yes, much more in depth, and I'm excited to do a whole new concept of film.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been excited to do it. This is the perfect opportunity for me to branch out into it because I didn't have much time and the ability to spend time doing just a project like that.
Yeah.
It was never in my regimen. It was either working for another person or you know, working for somebody else or having an art show that's coming up and having to do a project, get my paintings and my three-dimensional wall hangings done, things like that. But, you know, you provided me a space to grow something else and nurture something else that I knew was in me, but wasn't sure how to do yet.
Yay!
So
that's super exciting.
Yeah,
I'm really happy.
I feel empowered to explore that.
Awesome. Yeah, it's super important to have a space and time, and, you know, not to have the constraints or concerns about, you know, how you're going to live, how you're going to make money, how you're going to, you know, when you can really just focus on living and having a craft and exploring. I mean, it's a luxury, really. Most people don't have the luxury. So we're happy that we were able to support that process, because I think hearing you say that you are now going to think about your relationship with technology and how you can use the technologies to benefit human beings or even consider that relationship, that's a win. Then that's a win for us, because that's what really not all of us have the same opinion on how this is going to work or end up. But if you're thinking about it in those terms and thinking about the choices that you're making and the outcomes, and if they can be beneficial outcomes, then that's really important. And if you got to experiment and learn something new and do something completely new, and it has, like, love it that you managed to take the technology piece and learn something from it and grow from it, that's really incredible. I think the audience, you're already aware, and you can look at our website and our Instagram, which has the virtual gallery attached, and you can see all of Daniel's work, which he has done. You know, it's probably about 5 years worth of work in there, I would say. In the virtual gallery, this spectrum, like a really full spectrum of his work, which is really beautiful and poignant, multimedia, mixed media type work. I love that you're able to add this now to his repertoire of things and his resume. We want to be able to provide these type of experiences for people to come. Our community is based on doing collaborations of ideas and bringing people from different backgrounds and bringing different concepts together and having new outcomes. So I think this is a really perfect and really wonderful outcome, you know, to take this individual who just had an open mind and was a painter and is a painter, but give him a platform in which to say, okay, given this new idea, new concepts, new information, what can we create with it? And so we're really happy with what you did, and we think it's really just, like I said, it exceeded my expectations of what it was going to be. I think he's done a really wonderful job, and it's been really a great experience having you here as a resident in our little refuge, in our residence, and doing the exhibitions and all the work that we've done here. So I think it's a really great start, and it's going to be something that we want to try to build on and do new stuff based upon that. Is there anything that you want to let the audience know about, you know, the future work that you might want to do, or where they can find you, and
the future,
where you go next?
Where do I go next? That's always the question. So if you look at my website, it's danielkathalynas.com, and you'll see it says The Roaming Artist that comes up.
Yeah,
it's
really
there
fun.
for that reason, because I do roam. I don't necessarily have a particular place to be at the moment, which is okay. And my new work, I believe is going to be more involved with film.
Really? Interesting.
I've been dreaming up the idea of putting a production company together.
Really?
Yeah.
Secret.
Low level, just basic,
Secret.
small, and put something together where we work as a community together on a project.
Yeah.
Instead of just me, leaning over a table
Yeah.
and doing 1,800 shots.
Oh, that wasn't fun? You don't want to do that every time?
Well, it's fun, but I think it'd be funner with other people.
Yeah.
And my new work, I'm really into the kineticism of things. So I'm thinking that there may be some wall hangings that are moving in my near future, and I'm starting to open myself up to that and somewhat study the technology behind that, how to get things moving without wires, without seeming wires hanging from walls and cords plugged into walls, but an aesthetic that is clean, interesting, and yet moving. So that's my next process. I know that I'll be on both coasts next year, as far as I can see. I'll be back here in Virginia Beach for a show at the Norfolk Botanical Garden in April 2022. Most likely, I'm hoping to be in New York at that time as well. But I do have another show lined up in May of 2022 in Long Beach, Los Angeles, California, with another artist. It's going to be a joint exhibition with Yana Openkaryu, and I'm really excited about that. We've shown together before in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it really went well.
Nice.
And
So
I'm bouncing around. I'm
roaming.
I'm roaming. Oh, and this year I have a show in October. It's not a solo show, but it is Art San Diego, October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, as long as COVID restrictions opens up at that time and stays open.
Yeah.
There will be a large, I would say, conglomerate of artists there. They're taking over the convention center. So if anybody's in San Diego, join me. This is going to be a whopper of a show.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited for those things.
Yeah.
And who knows? There may be other things popping up, or
I'm sure there will as you roam.
As I roam. Yeah.
Stumble across wonderful opportunities.
Yeah, and I hope to continue the Roaming Artist video series. I was calling it American Odyssey. You'll find that on my website and YouTube channel. But also going across the country, filming as I paint, filming hopefully other artists as I engage them, filming the landscape and the culture of the people. I'm really into that. I really enjoy taking in what other people have that I don't understand.
And that's what made him such a wonderful resident. I think just having that open-mindedness and flexibility, kind of taking things in, because you could just do what you normally do anywhere. You don't have to go to the extent of moving into a whole new place and involving yourself. So it really is what we were very lucky to find you with that type of mentality and way of working. It's definitely been a huge positive asset for us, for sure.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you. And so please try to check out his other work and keep track of his roaming and his roams. And also keep track of what we're going to be doing coming up here. We'll be taking a small hiatus during the summer, and we will be doing some different events and different more alternative types of things. And then we can start the residency back up in the fall. So thanks for joining us and keeping watch, and you can watch this space. There'll be other artists doing some interesting things throughout the next couple of months. Thanks.
Thank you.